Om Bhurбhuvassuvaḥam Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayantam.
Namaste everyone. So we continue our videos on philosophy and teaching of Paramahansa Yogananda, one of the most bright and greatest Kriya Yoga meditation tradition guru. And today we again continue to discuss his commentaries to the New Testament. Yogananda was born in the very end of 19th century, and he left his physical body in 1952. And the last something like 32 years of his life he spent in the United States. So that was first time when really great Indian meditation master just immigrated to the United States with a special mission to teach Westerners meditation and philosophy. Before him, in the end of 19th century, actually another great mystic whose name was Swami Vivekananda, twice visited the United States. But okay, Yogananda was teaching Kriya Yoga meditation, which is absolutely universal technique, tool of self-inquiry and self-development. So it means actually you can be Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, or even not many religious person at all. And also you can be Indian, American, German, Russian, Chinese, doesn't matter. Kriya meditation absolutely universal. That's the reason why actually Yogananda, he wrote and published two huge books. One of them commentaries to the Bhagavad Gita and another one to the New Testament, and he explained the meaning of both great scriptures, one from Christian Bible, Gospels, and another one greatest Vedic scripture, Bhagavad Gita. And Yogananda gave his commentaries in the light of Kriya Yoga meditation. And now let us speak with some more details about the very end of chapter 75 from this the second coming of Christ. Very interesting title. As you remember that the second coming of Christ, the meaning is that the second coming is not personal for Yogananda, but the second coming actually happened while you're meditating and experiencing awakening of Christ's consciousness. And that means that in each of us actually this second coming of Christ happening, basically every day. Chapter 75 is the last and a huge in size actually, and that's about resurrection of Jesus, crucifixion, and then this very complicated process when Jesus came back to life. And according to Yogananda's approach, that was not just that Jesus was dead, then he came back to life. Really, he was not dead. He was in a deep meditation, what we call samadhi meditation, and actually when Jesus came back to life, really speaking, he experienced Shiva Svarupa Samadhi, which is the highest God realization. And that level of enlightenment or God realization includes physical immortality. And actually Jesus was alive pretty much physically. That's the reason why he actually for slightly less than 2 months was like walking to Jerusalem, Galilean area, and Palestine generally speaking, and he physically visited his disciples quite number of times. And Yogananda explaining to us that that was Jesus in his physical body, but in the very beginning disciples were not able to recognize him. So Yogananda is telling us that he, means Jesus, was the same, yet enigmatically not the same. Well, in what sense he was the same? It was the same Jesus, but his physical body was not so-called normal mortal physical body, but that was golden body of this Shiva Svarupa Samadhi, immortal physical body. That reason why his even very close disciples could not recognize him immediately, because some great change anyway took place, happened. And anyway, that was exactly physical body. That's really important, because that was not just a mystical vision, but the physical appearance of the Jesus. And to make his disciples sure that that's physical body, Jesus actually took food together, and that was a huge proof that he was actually in a totally new, divine, new, but still physical body. Peter and John, two very special disciples, because Peter was so-called the main one. We can say a kind of coordinator, like the chief disciple, in a sense, like a main coordinator. But the favorite disciple of Jesus was actually John, and that's what we know from New Testament. The early church, which was especially like first century Christian church in Jerusalem and generally speaking in Palestine, that was very special period of time. That's interesting that the leader of Jerusalem church, Jerusalem actually Christian congregation, in the very beginning was not Peter but Jesus' brother. That's very interesting, because mostly we don't have too much information about Jesus' relatives and his brother from the gospel, but at the same time that's historical fact that his successor, immediate successor of the Jesus, was actually his brother. And later on we attribute this position to the Peter. And of course Jesus actually blessed Peter to be like the very foundation of the church. But let us say a few words. First of all, when Jesus and early Christian spiritual masters spoke about church, the meaning of the word, term, church was totally different. Now we think about church as Roman Catholic Church, or Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox Church, or Protestant Church, Anglican Church, etc., Armenian Church, Coptic Church. But in the very beginning, actually not only first century, but something like 5-6 centuries of the Christian history, church was just a community, just a congregation, just a group of certain like-minded people, Christians, and these communities were very informal, and even position of the bishop was not like bishop in a modern church, and a bishop was like more like spiritual guide, and most of the early bishops were really highly advanced spiritually, not just as the administrators, but first of all spiritually advanced people. And early church was just groups of people in different towns and cities in Palestine, Syria, Greece, and Italy, and actually that was very informal and deeply spiritual communities. And the main focus was to pray, to meditate, to work together, to help each other. So it means we're very much confused when we speak about church, because we have to remember that the first 5-6 centuries of the Christian history, church was totally different. Of course, I respect all church traditions, including Roman Catholic, Protestant, Anglican, Orthodox, Armenian, and Coptic Church. But at the same time, a huge discussion and basically a very unspiritual one happened about, Peter as the founder of, and then the question, what kind of church? And of course, Vatican people, they are trying to prove that, Peter was the founder and the first Pope of Roman Catholic Church, which is very questionable, because actually Peter was traveling a lot, and he directly or indirectly established a huge number of churches in Palestine, Greece, Italy, South France, even England. And the question is, how can we choose which of that church is the church? So confusion. Apart from that, actually relics, the question of relics of Apostle Peter is also quite open, because actually Vatican people, they created this fantasy that, like in Vatican, they have relics of the Peter. No Christian outside Roman Catholic Church actually believe in that. For example, in Orthodox Church or Protestant Church, nobody believe, or Baptist Church, nobody believe that in Vatican they have relics of Peter, because this is just a fantasy created much later. And also let us remember that New Testament is written in Greek language, and the meaning is that Greek Orthodox Church is actually the church, because New Testament is written in Greek language. And much later, actually a few centuries later, Roman Catholic Church, like they split out of original Greek Church, they translated New Testament into Latin language, and also they created this institution of Pope out of actually Bishop of Rome. So anyway, Peter was coordinator, but the favorite, the most dear disciple of Jesus was actually John. It's a kind of interesting situation when Jesus' guru was John the Baptist, and Jesus' favorite disciple was also John. So something special about this name must probably, we can say. Well, anyway, Yogananda really emphasizing importance of John, the favorite disciple of Jesus, and Yogananda reminding us a very important message from Jesus himself about John, that actually Jesus told openly to his disciples that John will not die till he, Jesus, come back. And that itself created, as you know, a lot of rumors and confusion in the mind of many disciples and many early Christians, because, you know, how can we understand that John will not die till the so-called second coming of Christ? Well, but Yogananda explaining the hidden esoteric meaning of that. As you guys remember, that this book itself, the title is The Second Coming of Christ. And the meaning of this title is that Jesus is a personality, is like a human being, man, and the Christ is the absolute consciousness. It means that basically, I'm a human being, certain personality, you are the same. But in Christ consciousness, we are all stay in oneness. And through meditation, you may awake this Christ consciousness and become Christ in a sense. Of course, the tricky stuff is that if you say that, I'm Christ, well, that's just, better to go to the mental hospital. But if you say that, yes, I'm Christ, but at the same time I'm able to see in each and every human being also that Christ consciousness, that's truth. That's what spirituality is all about. When you're able to awake Christ consciousness in your heart, but at the same time, if you're able to see this Christ consciousness in the heart, in the consciousness, let us say, of each and every individual around you. And the difficult stuff is that some of that people may be not so friendly and even create problems to you. But anyway, each and every human being basically carry this Christ potentiality. And according to Yogananda, actually Jesus Christ, he spent 15 plus years in Himalayas learning meditation of Kriya Yoga from Mahavtar Babaji himself. And Jesus spent some years in the very east of India, then in Himalayas. And he was learning not only Vedic Hindu but the Buddhist philosophy as well. And then he brought this knowledge to Palestine, and when Jesus himself became spiritual master, he was teaching at least some of his disciples this secret and holy meditation techniques. According to Yogananda, some of early Christians, direct disciples of Jesus, and just early Christians, maybe like first and second generations, they practice meditations which are similar to the Kriya Yoga. And let us not to create any fantasy, of course. In Palestine, in the first and second century, most probably people didn't know this word, Kriya Yoga, but techniques, yes, that's true. They do practice this, and especially Yogananda explaining that the Revelation, Apocalypse, this actually book written by Apostle John, and this book not about end of the world and all this kind of awful blah blah stuff, but Apocalypse or Revelation is actually a book on meditation, and its instruction on meditation, the hidden one, of course, and also its explanation of that huge spiritual experiences which John himself experienced because of his meditation. So it means actually we can say that in an esoteric sense, the second coming of Christ happened in a consciousness of any meditation practitioner. By the way, doesn't matter Christian or not Christian. And it means Apostle John actually, it's looked like was the first disciple of Jesus who really experienced that second coming of Christ inside his, in his spiritual heart. And that's the reason why Jesus told that this John will not die till the second coming, because the meaning was the inner meditation, awakening of the Christ consciousness. Well, let me complete my video for today, and of course in the end, as usual, I invite you to watch my other videos on Yogananda's commentaries to the Bhagavad Gita and New Testament. And of course I have a lot of videos about history of Kriya Yoga tradition and about immortal Himalayan masters, so I invite you to watch my videos on different platforms in internet. So I'm sure that videos will be very interesting for you and very useful, I hope. So thank you very much, and see you next time.